to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. So today I don't want to talk about a specific book that I read, but rather I just want to wrap up on what I read in November and highlight what I will be reading in December. It was a fun month in November. I got to a few books that I've been wanting to check out, as well as a couple that I wasn't planning on reading, but that were suggested to me by friends. And so I had a good experience with them for the most part. In December, I have a lot of fun things planned. I should have a lot more free time to read just because I won't be working as much overtime. And there's a giant break since I work at a university, and it's winter break, which should be plenty of fun, very relaxing, which I'm looking forward to. So I don't know what January is going to bring because there's a law school and there's the regular school, and they both start at different times because they operate on different systems, and so who knows what's going to happen there, but let's not think that far into the future yet. Without further ado, let's talk about the wrap-up and the TBR. So in terms of November, what did I read? In terms of books for November, I read To Life by Harold Kushner, which was a book about the Jewish experience, sort of an analysis of what Judaism means, especially to a man who was a Jew or is a Jew. I thought it was very informative, and it was recommended to me by a friend, Bevan, who I'm still doing the book club with. She just recommended I check out one of those books. She's actually recommended quite a bit of Harold Kushner. I thought it was fun, but I didn't make a video about it because I felt like if I did, it would just be me criticizing Judaism somehow, and I didn't think that was really necessary on my part. I also read The Sum of Us by an author whose name I am not remembering right now, but I thought it was a pretty solid book. That was also recommended to me by Bevan. We created a Google Drive of books that I recommend, of books that she recommends, and so I'm just checking them off as I go along. The Sum of Us was about how racism is prevalent in society and how it actually hinders us from being able to offer full services to everyone. A good example of this was how in Montgomery, Alabama, the city instead of desegregating the pool, the city pool, they instead chose to fill it with cement, because rather than offer those services to people of color, they just took away the service from everyone, which is really sad because now, white children, black children, children of color, they don't get those access to those amenities anymore. And so by being racist, you're being cruel to, children, you're being cruel to the future. It's a very interesting book, and one that I think I recommend. Again, I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't really have a lot to say beyond saying that racism was wrong. So I decided not to talk about it. I also read the final volume of the Sandman series, The Dream Hunters, which I thought was a lot of fun. And I also thought it was interesting how Neil Gaiman incorporated Japanese mythology into the existing Sandman structure. So another example of how interesting and creative he is as a writer. I also read The Adventures of Superhero Girl by Faith Erin Hicks, a pretty solid book. I enjoyed it. It didn't really do too much in terms of introducing new ideas to that of what it means to be a superhero. But I did think it doesn't need to be that, and it does a good job of introducing young girls in particular to superhero comics, which I think is pretty much all it needs to do, especially in a comic book industry. As I said in the video I made for it, that often excludes women. I also read The Firekeeper's Daughter, which I thought was disappointing. I thought the premise and the story potential behind it could have been great, but the author behind it, maybe it's because she was a newer author or because of her own background, like she couldn't maximize everything that she could have with that story, and so it largely comes out disappointing and unfortunate. I was expecting better from that, so I'm gonna say I don't recommend ever reading The Firekeeper's Daughter. And then I also read A Wish in the Dark by Christine Soontornvat, which I thought was an excellent book. A lot of very interesting and powerful ideas, and it's even more significant because these ideas are intended for what I'd say is a teenage young adult audience, which is kind of amazing given how we typically dumb down these ideas for teenagers, but I don't think Soontornvat really attempted to do that at all. She created a really good book that is worth checking out. I also read a number of short stories. I read Rodin's The Hand of God, which I thought was pretty meh. I thought the story was interesting at the time, but upon reflection, not a lot stands out about it. And I had even forgotten that I even read it, so that should give you some indication of its quality. I also read The War Years by Viet Tran Nguyen, which I thought was a pretty solid story, a very interesting Asian narrative about never being able to leave your home country behind. There's always going to be reminders of it and what you struggled to get past as you tried to leave your home country. So yeah, really solid. I think I recommend that to anyone who's listening to me. I also read Phyllis, which I thought was kind of boring in retrospect, and even when I was talking about it for this channel, I was finding that it wasn't very exciting to talk about. So that's probably one that I'm going to forget that I had ever read in the first place too. I also read The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, which I thought was pretty kick-ass. It's a great short story for a really good reason. She talks about a pretty uncomfortable truth about us being complicit in the deaths of others because we continue systems that serve no purpose and are unintentionally or perhaps intentionally cruel. So a lot of great things. I recommend go watching my video and even reading the story for yourself because there's a lot to think about with it. And then as you'll see pretty soon, I also read The Body Snatchers by Robert Louis Stevenson, an author that I think a lot of people know about, but I don't think they know his short stories as much. The Body Snatchers was pretty spooky and a lot of fun to read, so I do recommend that one as well. And then I also read some poetry for the month of November. I did not make a video for Thanksgiving, so there's no poetry on that date, but there is poetry for the other days, other Thursdays of November. Now, as for December, I have a fair amount of books planned. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to all of them just because a lot of them are pretty bulky kind of books. I will note that I do plan on making a top 10 books of 2021, not necessarily books that were released in 2021, but that I read and consider to be some of the best that I've read this year. So I do plan to make a video on that, as well as a TBR for 2022. Now, there's a lot of books that I didn't get to in my 2021 TBR, but that's unfortunate. I might include, I might exclude. It really depends on what I'm feeling. But yeah, so look out for those videos. As for the books that I plan to read in December, I want to get to the Canterbury Tales. I was challenged by Lucas from The Bits of Lit to read that book, and so look out for that video on December 21st. I also plan on I'm reading right now, Romeo and Juliet again, because I really want to talk about it on this channel. There are a lot of interesting ideas, and it's a very unusual story in that it's about a two families' grudges that end with their two children dying as they try to pursue a romance with one another. Very unusual. And yet it's surprisingly stood the test of time, as it's something we're still talking about to this day. So, a lot of things we're thinking about and talking about with Romeo and Juliet. I also plan on reading Tokyo Ueno Station from an author whose name I've forgotten, but I'll put it up here. This was also recommended to me by Bevan from... or she doesn't have a booktube channel, but Bevan put this on the Google Drive, and so I want to read this for the month of December and check it off. I definitely plan on reading Dune. I know I said this for the past, couple months that I'm going to get to Dune, but I just haven't. But Dune is definitely on the agenda for December, probably at the end of the month, but I will make sure to get a video out about it either end of December or beginning of January, but it's going to happen for sure this time. I also checked a number of library books and graphic novels, and I'll go to the library and blah, blah, blah. I also plan to read a number of short stories for the month of December. I hope that I can make them Christmas themed, or at least wintry kind of themed, but I don't know if I'll be able to find the right ones for that. Because I read the Gift of the Magi by O. Henry last year, and I think that's one of the few Christmas themed short stories that are out there. But I'm sure there's more that I just haven't discovered yet. I do want to read The Polar Express. I have talked about children's literature on this channel before. It's one of my favorite things to do because you can always explore what is the author trying to tell children and how are they telling that story. And it's a different way to examine short stories. So I definitely want to examine The Polar Express, which I think was written by the same guy who wrote Jumanji. So something to think about there. And then as well as any other short stories that I can find. So that's what I have planned for December there. And then I have a number of poems that I want to read for the month of December, including some new poetry from Catherine Clincés, a poet writer that I've been following for a little bit now. I know her personally, and she's published at least 3 books, including one that was published last week, which I fully intend to talk about on this channel for this coming Poetry Thursday. And then I also want to read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, which I don't think I read last year. And since I read The Raven and Casey at the Bat, I do want to explore some of these more longer forms of poetry. And that's what 'Twas the Night Before Christmas is all about. So making it very thematic with this month, and also very, very appropriate for Poetry Thursday. Anyway, those are what I plan to read in December, as well as what I did read in November. If you have anything to say about what I read, or if you want to offer a suggestion for what I should read in December, I'm all ears, always willing to take suggestions and really examine stuff that I haven't really looked at before. So... also, if you think that if there's anything that you want me to read for 2022, again, I'm willing to take suggestions there. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this interesting channel, perhaps. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your travels and your ho-ho holidays. Farewell.